Welcome to this deep dive, and
Yeah.
today we're tackling the world of orphan care.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating stuff because we're going beyond the usual, like, oh, let's just donate money. We're
Right.
talking about how can these organizations really make a lasting change? How can they become sustainable?
Exactly.
So we've got some really interesting sources to dig into.
Yeah.
We've got excerpts from an academic paper. We've even got elements of a proposed business plan, and they both center around this idea of innovation in orphan care.
And what's really cool is both these come from the same person,
Oh, wow.
Dr. Faisal Awadhi.
Okay.
And he's really someone who embodies this idea of a bridge between academic research and real-world experience.
He's got an amazing background.
It does.
You know, PhD in leading innovation and entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
over 25 years of experience as an entrepreneur.
That's impressive.
I mean, we're talking real estate media, all sorts of things.
Uh-huh.
The fact that he dedicated this research paper to his late father
Yeah.
really speaks to his passion for this topic.
Absolutely. And his research, really dives into challenging that traditional model of orphan care,
Yeah.
the one where we just collect and distribute donations.
Right.
And he's asking, is that really sustainable in the long run?
It makes you think, right? What happens when those donations dry up?
Yeah.
Or if, economic conditions change, is there a plan B?
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that I think a lot of donors are thinking about too. They want to know that their money is going to be used responsibly and it's actually making a difference.
And that brings up a good point.
Yeah,
Transparency and accountability are becoming super important for donors.
I can see that.
They want to see a clear plan.
Yeah.
Not just a Band-Aid solution.
So is that where this idea of a business mindset comes in?
Yeah, that's exactly what Dr. Awadhi is advocating for.
So he's not saying that charities need to become, like these cutthroat corporations.
No, not at all.
Right.
It's more about borrowing those tools and strategies that businesses use
Okay.
to stay focused and manage their resources well and really plan for the future.
Like what kind of things are we talking about?
Strategic planning, clear governance policies, all of that good stuff.
So bringing some of that corporate structure into the nonprofit world.
Yeah, in a way, but wouldn't that stifle the compassion that drives these organizations?
Yeah, wouldn't it take away from the heart?
That's a common concern for
Mhm.
sure. And Dr. Awadhi addresses it head on.
Okay.
He actually found that very few nonprofits in his study were using formal business plans.
Really?
Yeah,
You think that'd be like a no-brainer, right?
you would think.
Especially when you're dealing with something as important as, taking care of kids.
Yeah, why do you think there's that resistance?
I don't know. It's interesting, right?
Yeah, it's complex.
Yeah.
There's this perception that business practices somehow conflict with compassion
Right.
and altruism.
Like those can't go together.
Exactly. And that's the thing Dr. Awadhi argues is that they can work together.
That makes sense. I mean, it's like if you're constantly just putting out fires, it's hard to think strategically. Exactly. You're just trying to get through the day.
Right. How do we prevent this from happening again?
Exactly. And this is where we start to see a glimmer of what a more sustainable approach might look like.
Oh, okay.
He highlights some fascinating case studies.
Like what kind of things?
Oh, remember that story about the scooter donation in Somalia?
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't just about giving someone transportation. It was
Oh.
about empowering them.
Giving them independence.
Exactly. And to contribute to their community.
It was like such a smart, simple solution.
Totally. Or how about the organization in Saudi Arabia that built a property to generate income for their program?
Oh, wow. That's thinking outside the box.
Right. Completely different way of looking at funding.
Instead of just relying on donations, they're creating assets.
Exactly. So these are just examples showing that there's this willingness to innovate.
Yeah, but are those isolated examples enough?
Yeah.
Is it enough to just have pockets of innovation here and there? That's a good question because Dr. Awadhi argues that while these are encouraging, there's still this lack of true entrepreneurial spirit.
Okay, so he's drawing a distinction between just starting a business and really cultivating that entrepreneurial mindset.
Exactly.
So what's the difference? Like, what does that even mean for a nonprofit? Are we talking about, charities becoming like giant corporations?
That's where we'll pick up in part 2.
Okay, so we left off talking about this entrepreneurial spirit
Yeah.
and what that looks like for a nonprofit. Help me unpack this a little. What's the difference between just starting a business and truly embracing that entrepreneurial mindset?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. It really gets at the core of what Dr. Awadhi is arguing.
Okay.
Think of it this way. Anyone can start a business, right?
Right.
But true entrepreneurs are driven by this really unique set of characteristics.
Like what?
They're visionaries. They see opportunity where other people see obstacles.
Okay.
They're relentless problem solvers, you know?
Always looking for that creative solution.
Exactly. And most importantly, they're not afraid to take risks.
Mm.
They experiment.
They're not afraid to fail.
Yeah, they embrace failure as part of the process. It's about constantly adapting and learning and growing.
So it's not about turning these charities into big, giant corporations.
No.
It's about infusing them with that drive, that agility, that willingness to innovate.
You got it. And Dr. Awadhi believes this is ultimately what's going to allow these organizations to achieve long-term sustainability and maximize their impact.
That makes sense, because if you're not constantly evolving, you're going to get left behind.
Right. And it's about moving beyond just relying on donations, becoming more self-sufficient, maybe even generating their own revenue stream.
Okay, so I'm starting to see the bigger picture here, but how does this actually play out in the real world? What does an entrepreneurial orphan care organization actually look like?
That's where Dr. Alawadhi's proposed business plan, Wilden, comes into play.
Yeah, we touched on this earlier.
Yeah.
I love the name Servants of Haven.
Such a great name.
And that logo with the 3 hands forming a globe.
Oh, yeah.
It's beautiful.
It really speaks to this idea of collective action and global impact.
Exactly. So tell me more about the actual plan. What are some of the key elements?
Okay, well, it's multifaceted. It goes way beyond just funding the existing orphanages.
Okay.
Dr. Awadhi proposes actually establishing what he calls sustainable villages.
Sustainable villages? What does that even mean?
So imagine like self-contained communities that are specifically designed to meet the needs of orphaned and vulnerable children.
So they'd have everything they need right there.
Exactly. They'd
Yeah.
have housing, education, healthcare, even vocational training, all within a safe and supportive environment.
Wow. So it's like a holistic approach.
Yeah.
It's not just about their basic needs, but it's about equipping them with the skills to actually thrive.
Precisely. It's about breaking that cycle of dependence, empowering these kids to become self-sufficient, contributing members of their community.
I love that. And it makes so much sense, because if you're just giving them handouts, you're not really solving the problem long term.
Exactly. You're not giving them the tools to build your own future.
But I imagine creating these sustainable villages takes a lot of resources.
Of course.
How does Welden address that? Where does the funding come from?
Well, that's where the entrepreneurial thinking comes in.
Okay.
Dr. Awadhi proposes diversifying the income sources, moving beyond just those traditional donations.
Yeah. So what other options are there?
He suggests establishing endowment funds
Okay.
that generate passive income,
That's smart.
launching income-generating businesses,
Oh, wow.
even exploring partnerships with the private sector.
So thinking outside the box, really getting creative.
Exactly. And he even suggests that some of these businesses could be run by the orphans themselves as they get older.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Right. So it creates this beautiful cycle of self-sufficiency.
I love that it's empowering them to not just be recipients of aid, but active participants in building their own futures.
Exactly. They're not just passive recipients. They're taking ownership.
That's amazing. But what about technology? I know that's a huge area of interest for you. Does Wilden incorporate technology into its plan?
Oh, absolutely. Technology is a key driver of innovation and impact, especially in this sector.
I can see that.
Think about the possibilities, using online platforms for fundraising,
Yeah, getting the word out.
awareness campaigns, leveraging e-learning tools
Oh, yeah, to deliver high-quality education,
to provide remote healthcare access.
especially in areas where resources are limited.
Absolutely. It opens up a whole new world of possibilities.
It's amazing how technology can really bridge those gaps.
Totally. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Dr. Awadhi also emphasizes the importance of building strong partnerships,
Partnerships with...
collaborating with local governments, NGOs, even families.
Oh, yeah, it takes a village, right?
Exactly.
Mhm.
Especially for these kids who have already faced so much adversity, they need that sense of belonging and support that safety net.
This Wilden plan is incredibly ambitious, but it's so inspiring.
It is.
Do you think it's realistic? Could something like this actually work?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
And it's one we're going to delve into in part 3, because while the plan itself is impressive,
Yeah.
what really struck me was Dr. Alawadhi's research into the human side of the equation, the organizational culture within these orphan care organizations.
Okay.
He uncovered this really fascinating paradox.
A paradox.
Yeah, one that I think is absolutely crucial to understanding the future of this sector.
Okay, so you've got me hooked. What's this paradox that Dr. Awadhi uncovered?
Well, it's interesting. See, he found that while these organizations are filled with people who are incredibly compassionate,
Right.
caring individuals dedicated to helping others,
Yeah, makes sense.
that very compassion can actually sometimes create a barrier to innovation.
Now, that's counterintuitive. How can compassion be a bad thing?
It's not that compassion is bad. It's more about how it, like, manifests. Sometimes it can hinder strategic thinking.
Oh, okay.
So if an organization is constantly in this crisis mode, just focused on meeting those immediate needs.
Right, food, shelter, the basics.
Exactly. It's hard to step back and think big picture long term.
I see that it's like you're so busy putting out fires that you don't have time to think about how to prevent them.
Exactly. And there's this underlying fear, that embracing those business principles
Yeah.
will somehow make the organization less caring, less focused on the needs of the children.
So it's almost like they're afraid that if they become too strategic, it'll taint their pure intentions.
Yeah, and Dr. Awadhi argues that this is like a false dichotomy.
Okay.
He believes that compassion and strategic thinking can actually work together,
They can coexist.
and they can enhance each other.
So it's not about choosing one over the other. It's about finding that balance.
Exactly. Finding that sweet spot, and by embracing innovation, they can actually amplify their impact without compromising their values.
Because a more sustainable organization can ultimately help more children, right?
Exactly, over a longer period of time.
So it's about using both your head and your heart.
Absolutely, to create that lasting impact.
And I imagine that takes a special kind of leader
Oh, for sure.
to really bridge that gap.
It does someone who can inspire compassion, but also that commitment to strategic growth.
Right, someone who can paint that vision of the future where these organizations aren't just surviving, but they're thriving.
Exactly. And Dr. Awadhi really believes that cultivating this new breed of leaders is essential.
For the future of orphan care.
Yeah, it's exciting.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive.
It has.
We went way beyond just that surface level understanding of orphan care,
We do.
We really dug deep into the complexities and the possibilities.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating field. And what's so exciting is that there's just so much potential for growth and innovation.
For me, honestly, the biggest takeaway is that compassion doesn't have to be a barrier.
Yeah.
It's about finding that balance, between heart and strategy.
Yeah. And that's where real change happens.
It's powerful.
It is. And it makes me wonder, could the future of orphan care be one where these organizations are more than just recipients of charity?
Right.
Could they actually be drivers of social and economic change in their communities?
It's a bold vision,
It is.
but it's one worth striving for.
Definitely.
It completely changes how we think about orphan care. It puts these organizations on the front lines
At the forefront.
of building a better future.
And it challenges all of us to think about how we can contribute,
Right.
whether that's through supporting these organizations, volunteering our time, or even exploring social entrepreneurship ourselves.
This deep dive has definitely left me feeling inspired and informed,
That's great to hear.
ready to explore this world further.
Awesome.
Thanks for guiding us through this fascinating landscape.
The pleasure was all mine. And remember, the journey doesn't end here.
Yeah.
This is just the beginning.